Carl Jenkins thought he was committing the perfect crime to save his reputation. He thought ending his wife's life would bury his secrets forever. But what he didn't know was that he wasn't the predator in this story. He was the prey. It was a quiet evening in the small, idyllic town of Crestwood, a place where everyone knew everyone, and secrets were the kind of thing people whispered about behind closed doors. But for Carl Jenkins, the truth was anything but quiet. His life, once filled with comfort and stability, was on the verge of imploding. It all started with one simple, terrifying decision, the decision to permanently silence his wife, Lucy. Carl and Lucy had been married for over 12 years. On the outside, they were the perfect couple, high school sweethearts who lived the American dream. Carl was a successful real estate agent with a charming smile. Lucy was the picture of grace, a mother and community leader everyone admired. But beneath the surface, their relationship had been crumbling for years. Before we go deeper into the shadows of this story, make sure you hit that like button and subscribe to Haze Crimes so you never miss an investigation. Now, let's get back into it. Carl had always been the dominant figure, the one with the plan. But lately, Lucy had begun to drift. She grew distant, quiet, and secretive, often disappearing for hours without explanation. Carl trusted her, until the evening he found the hidden phone. In a blind rage, Carl scrolled through messages that painted a devastating picture. Lucy wasn't just pulling away, she was seeing someone else, a colleague from her volunteer work. Betrayed and enraged, Carl confronted her that night. But instead of breaking down, Lucy stood her ground. She was calm, too calm. She coldly told him it was over and that she had been planning her exit for months. In the heat of that moment, Carl felt his world slipping away. He grabbed the weapon from the drawer, the one they kept for protection. Before he could process the gravity of his actions, the unthinkable happened. 2 shots rang out and Lucy collapsed, the scene becoming a permanent crimson reminder of his choice. Carl stood there, hands trembling. What had he done? But it was too late. Over the next few days, he cleaned the scene, disposed of the evidence, and staged a home invasion. He played the grieving husband perfectly, but as the weeks passed, a nagging feeling gnawed at him. Something wasn't right. Then, the phone rang. The voice on the other end was familiar, but it wasn't the police. It was the man Lucy had supposedly been seeing. "Carl," the voice said, cold and detached. "I think it's time you know the truth. What you did to Lucy. It wasn't just a crime of passion." Carl's heart stopped. "What are you talking about?" "Lucy was never going to leave you, Carl," the voice continued. "She was never planning to run away with me. She had already made her choice, and you were just the pawn." The realization hit Carl with sickening clarity. He was being manipulated by a puppet master he didn't even know existed. And then, the voice dropped the final bombshell. "You're not the only one with blood on your hands, Carl. You never were." His world, already shattered, began to crumble even further. What had Lucy really been hiding? Carl's hands trembled as he stared at the phone, the voice still echoing in his mind. "You're not the only one with blood on your hands, Carl. You never were." His heart raced. Who else could be involved? Had Lucy been playing him all along? His mind spun as he replayed every moment of trust he'd given her, every word she'd said. It wasn't just an affair. There was something much darker happening, and Carl was only beginning to see the terrifying truth. The voice on the other end spoke again. "You really think it ends with Lucy, don't you? You think you're the only one who's lost everything?" Carl slammed the phone down, his body shaking. He needed answers. He needed to know who was behind this, and why Lucy had been so calm, so cold, when he pulled that trigger. He walked into the police station the next morning, his mind set on getting to the bottom of it. But when he walked through the doors, he was greeted by an officer who didn't look surprised to see him. "Mr. Jenkins, we need to talk," the officer said, his face grim. Carl's stomach dropped. "About what?" "About the tragedy at your home," the officer continued, "and the fact that you might not be the only one involved." The officer handed him a thick file, and Carl's world started to spin again. There, in black and white, was a list of connections Carl hadn't even considered. It turns out Lucy's secrets went far beyond a hidden phone. She'd been involved in a much larger scheme, one that reached deep into Carl's own life. She wasn't just seeing someone else, the officer said. Lucy was working with someone you know very well. Carl's eyes widened. "Who?" "Your business partner, Victor Greene." Carl felt his chest tighten. Victor? The man he'd trusted for over a decade? Victor was more than just a partner. He was a friend, someone Carl had brought into his life like family. But now, with every piece of evidence pointing back to him, Carl's mind raced. Victor had been quietly siphoning money from their joint ventures for years, and Carl had no idea. But Lucy, it seemed, was the key. She had discovered Victor's betrayal, but instead of confronting him, she'd played both sides, helping him cover up his crimes while also plotting her escape. The officer's words hit Carl like a ton of bricks. Victor helped orchestrate the whole thing. The affair, the staging of the scene, it was all part of a plan to get you out of the way, and Lucy was his accomplice. Carl felt the walls closing in. "No, this can't be happening." "Sorry, Carl, but it's true." The officer paused, letting the words sink in. "There's one more thing you need to know. We found Victor's prints on the weapon." Carl recoiled. "What? But I was there. I pulled the trigger." "Exactly," the officer said, his voice dropping. "And that's where things get twisted. You were the one holding the gun, but the evidence suggests Victor made sure you were the only one who would take the fall. He didn't just want her gone, he wanted you behind bars." Carl's world exploded. The man he trusted had orchestrated the entire thing, framing Carl for the act while preparing to walk away with everything they had built. But just as Carl began to process the enormity of the betrayal, the officer dropped the final bombshell. "There's something else, Carl. Lucy didn't just have an affair with Victor. She was planning to reveal evidence of even more crimes Victor was involved in. Things beyond your business. That's why he needed her silenced. But she was playing him the whole time. And when you made your choice that night, you sealed both your fates." Carl stood there, frozen in shock. His entire life was a lie. Everything he thought he knew about the people around him was crumbling. "I didn't know, officer. I didn't know any of this." The officer nodded. "You've been used, Carl. And now you need to get ahead of this before Victor finishes what he started." Carl felt the weight of it all. Lucy was gone. Victor was the architect of his ruin, and Carl was stuck in the middle of a web of lies and betrayal. But as Carl left the station, another chilling thought crossed his mind. What if Lucy had left him a clue? A piece of evidence that could destroy everything Victor had built? What if the truth wasn't over yet? The deeper Carl digs, the darker the truth becomes. Carl's mind was spinning as he walked out of the police station. Lucy's death had never been a simple affair. It was a tangled web of shadows. But now, with the shocking revelation that Victor, his closest ally, had orchestrated everything, Carl's world had been completely torn apart. What if Lucy had left a clue? What if she knew exactly how far Victor would go and had planned her own final move, leaving Carl the pieces to destroy Victor's twisted plan? Carl couldn't shake the thought, even as he was swallowed by the guilt of his own actions. As night settled over Crestwood, Carl found himself back at home, staring at the empty space where Lucy's life used to be. Everything felt wrong. He knew he had to act. The police were piecing the puzzle together, but Carl needed to be the one to ensure Victor's betrayal was fully exposed. He couldn't be the only one to take the fall for a game he didn't even know he was playing. He rushed to the attic, remembering a box Lucy had always kept hidden behind old family albums. With trembling hands, he pulled it from the dust and opened it. Inside were folders, old letters, and a single simple note written in Lucy's neat, precise handwriting. 3 words made his blood run cold. Victor's dirty secret. Lucy had known. She had been playing a dangerous game of her own, keeping insurance to ensure that even if the worst happened, the truth would surface. Beneath the words was a scribbled address to a rundown, abandoned building on the outskirts of town. Carl didn't hesitate. He drove to the desolate outskirts, arriving at a boarded-up structure that felt like a tomb. Inside, the air was thick with mildew and silence. In the corner, tucked behind an old desk, he found a safe. Using the combination Lucy had hidden on the back of her note, Carl swung the heavy door open. Inside were bank statements, legal documents, and a single video recording. Carl hit play. The screen flickered to life, and there was Lucy, calm, steady, and haunting. "If you're watching this, it means something has gone terribly wrong," she said. "Victor is not who he says he is. He's been using Carl's company as a front for years. I've been keeping track of everything, and now it's time for the truth." Carl's heart sank as Lucy revealed the depth of the embezzlement and the lies. But then, her voice softened. "I never wanted Carl to be dragged into this. I know he'll be blamed for what happened, but he didn't deserve this. I'm sorry, Carl, please. Forgive me." Before Carl could even process the weight of her words, a floorboard creaked behind him. He spun around, eyes wide. Victor was standing in the doorway, the shadows masking his face, a weapon gripped firmly in his hand. "You think you've won, Carl?" Victor sneered, his voice dripping with malice. "This was never about Lucy. This was always about me. And now you're going to pay for everything you've uncovered." Carl's world blurred into a whirlwind of panic. He was trapped, cornered by the man who had destroyed his life from the inside out. But as Victor stepped into the light, Carl realized one thing. He wasn't going down without a fight. What will Carl do next? Can he turn the tables on Victor, or has he already walked into his final trap? Drop your theories in the comments below. Do you think Carl can escape Victor's reach, or is it too late for justice? Make sure to like and subscribe to Haze Crimes for more mysteries that go deeper than the headlines. You won't want to miss what happens next.